Om Stapakaya Dharmasya Sarvadharmaswarupine Stapakaya Dharmasya Sarvadharmaswarupine Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishna Te Namaha Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukampadrita Vigraham Vai Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukampadrita Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidhyam Tam Ramakrishnam Sirasa Namami.
Let us offer our salutations to Sri Ramakrishna, the embodiment of all religions, the Supreme God Incarnate. Let us pray to Him to lead us from the unreal to the real, to lead us from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. Today's topic on which I am going to speak, how to cross this vast snare of the world. Since we are in ignorance, we are not able to really be happy in this life. As long as there is ignorance, we are bound to be unhappy in one way or other. So if we have to have the experience of the real happiness, we must really aspire for knowledge. We must take methods by which we can get rid of this ignorance. So ignorance is the root cause of everything what we see. Shankaracharya has composed a great hymn where he clearly points out what is it that is trapping us into this world. See, people generally, they keep on engaging themselves in material things and trying to acquire more and more secular knowledge, thereby becoming more and more worldly minded. The more they become worldly minded, the tendency would be not to really feel the presence of God. That means they don't believe in God or the spiritual entity that is in them. So that is the greatest snare people are experiencing in this world. And secondly, people are carried away by their insatiable desire for possessions. So, as long as they are caught by the desires, they lose their peace of mind and they become highly discontented. And so, naturally they will not be happy. So desires are the cause of the snare. Thirdly, all these things have been pointed out by great Shankaracharya. Then again, there is a intense hankering for the pleasures of the world. All sorts of sensuous pleasures. But these desires for pleasures naturally cause tremendous snare. So, the water droplet on the lotus leaf is tremulous and unsteady, so too is life, which is as uncertain. So, this body is subjected to various ailments, and life is ultimately nothing but worry, misery and grief. So if one is focusing on his body and things external, he is bound to be unhappy. And another snare in this world is that as long as you are fit to make earning, so long lots of people will be around you, soliciting you, and they begin to praise you, and because they expect something from you because you are earning. But once you become not fit enough to earn any more money, that means probably after you get retirement, you will see how the very people who are flocking around you are just running away, not caring for you at all. So, all these things we have to note and analyze things so that we can take really positive steps to get rid of this snare. Another important point Sri Shankaracharya tells, see, everyone passes through different stages in life: childhood, youth, adult, and then finally old age. Childhood skips off on sport and play. Youth flies off in pursuits of love-making. As one grows older, he is drowned in worry about the security and future of his family. So, one's whole life gets spent in some kind of worry or other. And at no stage does a person find time to lift his thoughts to God. In fact, there are many people who say, we want to think of God, but unfortunately I am finding no time to think of God. It is true. They are very busy, and the family entanglements and the worldly desires keep them ever busy, and they just can't do it. And not only that, they don't have any kind of taste for spiritual ideas or things like that, because the mind is habituated to run after the things of the external world. So that is the point that we should really seriously think. Another point Shankaracharya points out that how we develop a kind of attachment to our own kith and kin, and we develop a tremendous bond amongst our own selves, our relations, our children, our family, and so on. Shankaracharya tells that who belongs to you and to whom you belong? Whence did you come, O brother? Reflect on the truth of it all. So, when youth is gone, where is lust and its play? Where is the lake when its waters have dried up? Where are the kinsfolk when riches are gone? When truth is realized, where is the snare of samsara? So, the pleasures and riches of worldly life are deceptive appearances. Understanding that they are all but a passing show, we should develop detachment and be dispassionate and cultivate renunciation and seek Brahman, the Paramatman. Day and night, dawn and dusk, winter and spring, all these are flitting across the stage of the world. While time thus is frolicking and befooling us, our lifespan is also running out. Yet we don't even a little give up the clinging to our desires, nor do we let the desires loosen their grip on us. And people are there who constantly worry about their properties, about other things, but nobody seriously seek the truth. So, the body has become decrepit, the hair on the head has turned completely grey, the mouth has become totally toothless, the back is bent down, and the old man cannot take even a step without the aid of his stick. Yet he does not loosen even a bit his hold on the bundle of desires. So, in so many ways, Shankaracharya has warned us to take immediate steps without losing time to turn to spiritual ways of life. Because whatever life you have got is an opportunity given to you so that you can unfold your spiritual personality. It is for the spiritual evolution that you are being born as a human being on this earth. Whereas the other regions, there are so many worlds, no doubt, but all the worlds are they are the places for either enjoyment or suffering. There the law of karma is not operative. But it's only on this earth plane that we are given chance to evolve ourselves spiritually so that we can realize the truth and be happy forever. So Shankaracharya tells, finally, surrender yourself to the lotus feet of the Guru. With your senses and mind disciplined and freed from the shackles of samsara, worldliness, you will behold the Lord who is seated in your heart. Well, it's a well-known fact that people in the world, how they are trapped. There's no secret there. It is open secret, we should say. But still, people don't want to give up. They think giving up the world means unnatural. giving up desires means unnatural, and so they hold on to their desires and external activities. So herein comes the importance of spiritual masters who show the way to cross this vast snare of this world. First of all, they live the life themselves. Here we have got a glorious example of Sri Ramakrishna's life. How he has acquired immense spiritual knowledge through his tremendous spiritual disciplines, and finally he attained the abode of Supreme Godhead. He taught more by his life than by his words. His message of God was to all human beings, irrespective of their caste, creed, or faith. His words of wisdom are illustrated with fine and simple examples which make difficult and abstract things crystal clear even to the layman. For instance, while linking the life of man with the existence of God, Sri Ramakrishna says, the bubble has its birth in the water, floats on it, and is ultimately resolved into it. So also, the embodied being and the Supreme Paramatman, the cosmic being, are one and the same. The difference between them being only one of degree. For one is finite and limited, while the other is independent. Further, Sri Ramakrishna says that God alone is true and the rest is all false. The Lord himself is playing in the form of man. He is a great juggler, and this drama of Jiva and Jagat is his great jugglery. The juggler alone is true and the jugglery is false. How nicely Sri Ramakrishna teaches the spiritual ideas. Emphasizing the importance of God in the life of man, Sri Ramakrishna says, ciphers placed after the figure 1 get the value of hundreds and thousands, but they become valueless if you wipe out that figure. The many ciphers have value only because of the one. First the one and then the many. First God and then the jivas, the embodied beings, and the jagat, that is creatures and the world. Again Sri Ramakrishna tells, regard the false attractions and attachments of the material world and the love of the Divine Mother. Regarding them, Sri Ramakrishna says, little children play with dolls as they like, but as soon as their mother comes, they throw aside their dolls and run to her crying, Mama, Mama. So you too, O man, are playing in this material world, infatuated with dolls of wealth, honor, fame, power, position, and so on. If, however, you once see your Divine Mother, you will not find pleasure in all these things. Throwing them all aside, you will run to her. And Sri Ramakrishna says, you will have to persist in your efforts to see and realize God. To those who, after a little effort, get despaired and say that there is no God, Sri Ramakrishna says, there are pearls in the deep sea, but you must hazard all perils to get them. If you fail to get at them by a single dive, don't conclude that the sea is without them. Dive again and again, and then you will be sure to be rewarded in the end. So persevere in your attempts, and you are sure to realize him at last. Then Sri Ramakrishna points out how the attachment to lust and wealth as the illusion of Maya are responsible for keeping man away from God. That is, these things which keeps God hidden from man. Illustrating this in a very lucid way, Sri Ramakrishna says, once Rama, Sita and Lakshman, they went to the forest as exiles. Sri Ramchandra was walking in the front, Sita in the middle, Lakshman behind her. Lakshman was very anxious to have always a full view of Rama, but as Sita was in the middle, he could not have it. So then he prayed to Sita to move aside a little. And as soon as she did so, Lakshman's desire was fulfilled and he saw Ramachandra. Such is the arrangement of Brahman, Maya and Jiva in this world. So long as the illusion of Maya does not move aside, the creature cannot see the Creator. Man cannot see God. Further he says that so long as man is attached to worldliness, he cannot rise high and achieve God. If there is a small hole at the bottom of a jar of water, the whole water will leak out. Similarly, if there is the smallest tinge of worldliness in the aspirant, all his exertions will come to naught. Once a gentleman came to Sri Ramakrishna and he offered some thousands of rupees to be utilized by him. But as soon as this offering was made, Sri Ramakrishna was shaken. He refused and said, if I accept the money, my mind will always be dwelling on it. So I don't want your money. Take back. The gentleman then proposed to keep the amount with the master's wife so that she can use the amount for Sri Ramakrishna, for his service. Again Sri Ramakrishna refused, saying, it would always be in my mind that I am keeping my money with so and so. No, I don't want. But the gentleman still persisted and he began to quote Sri Ramakrishna's own sayings. He said, he referred, you yourself have told, and he is referring to that statement which Sri Ramakrishna had made earlier, if the mind is like oil, it will float even upon an ocean of lust and gold. So why should you have to be worried? At this Sri Ramakrishna replied, that's true indeed, but if the oil floats on water for a considerable length of time, then it becomes putrefied. In the same way, even if the mind were only to float over the ocean of lust and gold, the continuous contact for a long period would surely tend to vitiate the mind and make it give out an evil odor. Then another great snare is vanity, egoism. Man is surrounded by vanity and egotism all around in this world. And each person thinks that he alone is powerful, wealthy and learned, the others being inferior to him. This attitude keeps him away from enlightenment and God. Quoting an example from nature, Sri Ramakrishna says, it's a beautiful example, simile Sri Ramakrishna has given. After dusk, when the glowworms make their appearance, they think we are giving light to the world. They are so proud. But when the stars begin to twinkle, the pride of the glowworms is humbled. Now, the stars begin to think we are illuminating the world, the universe. But after a while, the moon ascends the sky, and its silvery light humiliates the stars, and they pale away in sadness. Again, the moon grows proud and thinks that by its light the whole world is lighted. But presently, the dawn proclaims the ascent of the sun on the eastern horizon. And when there is the moon now, and where is the moon now? If they who think themselves rich ponder over these facts of nature, they will never boast of their riches and power. And then Sri Ramakrishna points out, it is the meek and humble that have access to the court of the Lord. Sri Ramakrishna says, rainwater never stands on high ground, but runs down to the lowest level. So also, the mercy of God remains in the hearts of the lowly, but drains off from those of the vain and proud. Vanity and pride lead to downfall. Sri Ramakrishna says that those who always talk big of themselves are in fact the greatest ignoramuses. Citing an example, he says, throw an unbaked cake of flour into the hot ghee and it will make a sort of noise. But the more it is fried, the less is the noise. And when it is fully fried, the bubbling ceases altogether. So long as a man has a little knowledge, he goes about talking and preaching. But when the perfection resulting from true knowledge is gained, he no more makes a vain display. When the jar is full, it doesn't make a noise anymore. So, the man with true knowledge and realization of God remains calm, and the bees swarm of themselves to the full-blown flowers. Ants come of themselves to the spot where sweets are placed. When fire burns, the moths come of themselves. Such is the effect of perfection. No one need invite bees or ants or moths. Hundreds and thousands of men and women come of their own accord and flock around a man of knowledge, for he is the real teacher. Sri Ramakrishna says that it is very difficult to preach to the worldly minded. The heart of a sinful man is like curly hair. You will never succeed in straightening it. So also, the heart of the wicked cannot be easily made upright and pure. Sri Ramakrishna gives an example. As a nail cannot be driven into a stone, but enters easily into the earth, so the advice of the pious does not affect the soul of a worldly person while it goes deep into the hearts of a believer. He gives another example. A wet match doesn't ignite however hard you may strike it. A soiled mirror does not reflect however hard you may try. Similarly, a person surrounded by Maya, the illusion of the world will never, that is, the Maya means the illusion of the world. Such a person surrounded by this illusion will never be able to realize God. Regarding religious differences, Sri Ramakrishna very clearly says, in a potter's shop, there are vessels of different shapes and forms, pots, jars, dishes, plates, etc. But all are made of the same clay. So, God is one, but He is worshipped in different ways under different names and aspects. As the master of a house, He is father to one, brother to another, and husband to a third. And so He is called by different names by different persons. So, the one God is described in various ways by different persons. In this connection, Sri Ramakrishna advises that one should not dispute over these religions or religious differences, for once true knowledge dawns on an individual, he himself will realize his mistake. Then Sri Ramakrishna gives an example. When the fire enters the charcoal, it destroys its blackness. So, when the mind is burnt by the fire of knowledge, its impure nature is destroyed. So, one must aspire for knowledge. One must approach the spiritual teacher, and one must sincerely struggle to get over ignorance. Sri Ramakrishna has provided humanity with many fine sayings in order to enable it to be enlightened and to successfully cross this vast snare of the world. He has really paved a way whereon man can march to self-realization and ultimately reach his destination, the achievement of God and liberation. We find in Sri Ramakrishna's life how he trained all his disciples. His main teaching to them was, first you concentrate all your attention upon your spiritual disciplines. Try to achieve the result. Try to see God, and afterwards you share that joy with the people around you. That is, engage yourself in service. First you realize the truth, then if you talk, people surely believe what you say, and whatever you say becomes true also. Nothing is falsified. So, Sri Ramakrishna was like the sun. The sun, the sustainer of the solar system, does his job magnificently by just being what he is, an orb of light. Ramakrishna too carried out his mission by just being what he was, a man in God and God in man. All his teaching can be expressed in one phrase: the primacy of the Spirit. This teaching was the most urgent need of this time, for man had then forgotten what his essence was and was identifying himself with the base matter. The glorious child of God, who was heir to celestial puissance, was ignorant of his status and was groveling in the dust like a worm. Sri Ramakrishna recalled man to his birthright and made him conscious of his grand destiny. Man was not to think of himself as a body with a soul in it, but as a soul manipulating body and mind. Once the emphasis was shifted to the soul, all other graces of life would be added to man. Sri Ramakrishna used to bring home this point to his hearers by telling them the story of the tiger cub living with a flock of sheep. It's a famous story. It has great spiritual significance. The same story has been said by Swami Vivekananda also in his discourses. The tiger cub was growing in body the tiger way, of course, but owing to the influence of association, behaved exactly like a sheep, grazing and bleating. Because it was always surrounded by sheep, and so it behaved like them. One day, a big tiger attacked the flock, and it was amazed to find one of its own species running away in fear, running away along with the sheep. The forest tiger caught hold of the cowardly tiger, but it was quite a task for the farmer to convince the latter of its tigerhood. The forest tiger in the story functioned as the guru who brings to man a sense of his stuff. When the man takes his stand on his being spirit, his entire outlook and behavior naturally change. He then sees that this universe is God-filled and God-directed. And then he links himself with God. With this perspective, life has a new meaning for him. It becomes a yajna. Karma gets transmuted into worship. Service to man and beast becomes adoration of the divine. Renunciation and not enjoyment becomes the way of life. The ego dies and he regards himself as but an instrument of providence. Lust and greed have no longer any hold on him. All narrowness of dogma and creed leaves him forever. The universe is no longer to him a confusion and a chaos. He sees an order and a rhythm in the unfoldment of life. He is at peace with himself and with all the world. Sri Ramakrishna did not emphasize doctrines and sects, but laid his finger on the essence of existence in each man, which is spirituality. To him, religion meant not words and names, but spiritual realization. He showed that as renunciation and realization came, would the harmony in all the religions also become apparent. So, by following these spiritual ideas given by the great spiritual masters, we are sure to cross the vast snare of the world. So spirituality must be properly understood. So practicality is always essential in our spiritual pursuit. Sri Ramakrishna always was clear in this respect. He would say, be very alert in doing sadhanas. That's the way how to get hold of your mind. Otherwise, mind slips down for any silly reason. Mind drops down and one will lose the balance and he will be in great trouble. So, constant meditating on the spiritual ideas that I am the spirit, I am not this body or mind or the intellect. So, I should not get myself attached to these things. On the other hand, I must divert all attention and focus on the Divine Spirit who is dwelling in my own heart. So I should dwell upon that Spirit. So turning the mind inward is spirituality. So close up all the outgoing tendencies, close up all your senses, preserve your energy and direct it towards the Paramatman who is residing in your heart. When you are able to establish yourself firmly on the spiritual idea, that itself will take care of other things. That means you don't have to worry about the impurities of the mind, because your mind is no longer thinking about those impurities. The impurities may be there in the corner of the mind, but since you are not giving any attention to them, they won't bother you. They begin to bother you if you give even slightest attention towards them. So, Bhagavan Shri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Udasinata, have indifferent attitude, indifferent to these botherings. Be indifferent. Just don't care for them. In order to have this attitude, you must be very courageous and bold. So your courageousness and boldness must be used in this respect. That is, not to bother about things that bother you. That is possible only by holding on to spiritual ideas. All these spiritual ideas have been tested and they can be practiced by anybody and everyone gets the result. And Sri Ramakrishna has given assurance and hope and said, whoever takes up this spiritual idea and practice it sincerely, he will definitely receive God's grace. And he will be overwhelmed by God's grace. And then, even though people have to perform certain duties in the world, yet they should never forget worshipping God. So God must be enshrined. He must be worshipped. He must be thought of. You must do prayers. Submit yourself humbly. Try to maintain your purity and be simple. Never be egoistic for any reason. When you practice all these things, in course of time, you will see how you have become very strong spiritually. You don't care for anything else. It's only through spiritual strength, one would be able to see God. Spiritual strength is a necessary to cross the vast snare of the world. Otherwise, it's not so easy to get out of this noose. So, first of all, you must become aware that you have been trapped. How many people do really get that awareness? People think they are quite okay. Sri Ramakrishna gives the example of the fishes caught in the net. So, some fishes, they think they are quite safe, not knowing they will be cooked. But some fishes, they somehow become immediately aware of the danger, they just slip out of the net, get escaped. So, for some people, experience open their eyes. After passing through certain difficult situations, after passing through tremendous pain and misery, they open up. Well, what is all this? How to get out of this pain and suffering? Then he begins to think seriously about spiritual life. But then it depends upon the intensity of his thinking. If he is thinking seriously, he will definitely find out the way. He will definitely find the spiritual teacher. And he will see that he can do something to follow in the spiritual way. In fact, the other day, one person came and met me. That person came along with her husband also. Both of them came. They were talking many things. Finally, the wife was telling, Swamiji, how long should I have to be working and doing things in the way I am doing now? How long should I continue this way? So I must put a stop. She has become very serious, whereas the husband is not so serious. Husband was trying to compromise, but the wife was very adamant. She said, no more of these things anymore. Enough of these things. I have to take care of my spiritual development. I was stunned to see that. And she is making that statement because she passed through tremendous suffering. And she got the bitter experiences by the worldly contacts and the worldly way of thinking, and how people are deceptive, and how it is really terrible to look into the ways of the world. So she was developing a tremendous dislike towards the worldly life. So she was telling very clearly that she definitely wanted to start spiritual life, even though it is late, doesn't matter. Definitely I need spiritual teachings. I need some method to go through. Please give instructions and guide me in the spiritual path. The husband could not talk one word more after that, because she was speaking with such vehemence. I noticed both of them. I have looked at them both. Anyway, that is true. When the child thinks that his play is over, he feels disgusted to play anymore, he cries, Mama, Mama. Nothing would satisfy the baby. The mama should come running to the child. Then the child will be happy. In the same way, people first have to become aware that they are caught under the snare of the world. That awareness is the first step in the spiritual life. Once that awareness comes, the next step would be follow-up action, seeking the spiritual teacher, taking instructions, and thirdly, implementing them, which is very important. Every stage is important. Please note that. In spiritual path, all the steps from the beginning to the end are equally important. Then only you will be able to see God, you will be able to realize the truth, you will be able to cross really the vast snare of the world. Thank you very much. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavagai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. May the Lord protect us. May He nourish us. May we be enlightened. May we not hate each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.